This is the Writers Podcast, a Writers After Dark radio production, bringing you the best in writing advice, news, trends, and interviews. Hosted by award-winning authors S.K. Anthony and Raymond Esposito.
Hey, welcome to the Writers Podcast. I'm Raymond Esposito, and I'm here in the studio with my ultra-talented co-host, the Venezuelan vixen S. Catherine Anthony. Hey, Kat, how you feeling?
Well, I feel great now after that intro. How are you tonight?
I'm good. So you ready to do this thing?
Well, even if I'm not, let's do this thing anyway.
Alrighty.
So, we're authors, bloggers, and YouTubers. Naturally, we wondered if the world needed another podcast.
Yep, and after much deliberation, do you want to guess what we concluded? Well, we concluded that yes, we should, but only if we could provide useful and objective writing advice.
So all we ask is you listen to the first 100 episodes before you reach any conclusions.
Yeah, give us 100. I mean, just give us 100, and then
That's all.
Then you can reach.
That's all.
Objective writing advice is challenging. It's a challenging goal because, as W. Somerset Maugham, did I get that right?
W. Somerset Maugham.
As he said, I'm assuming it's a he, there are 3 rules to writing a novel, and unfortunately, no one knows what they are.
Right, and seriously though, we both share a passion for writing and for helping other writers.
I wonder how many times we're going to say those seriously in this podcast. Probably a lot. But
Do
on
we
that,
have it a lot?
Yeah.
But that's probably because we're serious about it, though.
Yeah, that's true. And on that point of sharing a passion for helping others, really, probably you do more than me. I can be a little bit self-involved with my own writing, but I'm here to try.
That's all we can ask.
And for us, the Writers Podcast is a way to help writers by cutting through all the noise and giving listeners not only information, but options to discover the things that can work for them.
Yeah, plus doing a podcast is another way to procrastinate and have a good excuse for not writing. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, I mean, the second best thing to writing is talking about writing. And as for our introduction, we decided the best start was with a discussion how to select the best advice. How to figure out what is good advice and how to avoid the bad advice or suggestions that might have ulterior motives.
Cough, cough, our advice. Cough, cough.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah. And what rules can you apply to determine if the advice being given is good, bad, or most importantly, deciding if it's useful to you?
Yeah, I think part of the inspiration for that is you and I are 2 completely different writers, and we could never agree on how to write how to write a book. We'd never agree on that. The things that work for you, I'll say might never work for me, but probably most definitely would never work for me.
Yeah, I'll probably end up in jail, and I don't think orange is my color, so, But exactly. And so on the Writers Podcast, we're going to examine things from several points of view.
Yeah, there's a saying that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if you put 10 writers in a room and ask them, hey, what's the best way to start a story? You're going to get like 5 different variations of the answer, 2 different versions of each. Writers just have different approaches.
Yes, the point is, in writing, there are only a few areas where there's one single right way to do anything, other than maybe grammar, but even that has its exception. So how do you decide what to follow and what to throw away?
Well, there are a few simple tricks to separate the useful from the useless, and the first is to always consider the source.
Right.
For example, I love the Book Designer blog, if you've never seen it. It's got great articles, and Joel is, he's a smart guy. But Joel really, really, really spends a lot of time talking about the importance of fonts in a book and book layouts.
But they look so pretty.
Yeah, because that's what he does, right? He's a book designer. I write books in Antiqua because I like it. I like the way it looks, and then Georgia for print because that prints nicely. And when it comes to an ebook, who really cares? People can pick their own font. And the point is that of all the things to spend time on. A 4-hour font discussion with Joel probably isn't high on my list. And it's nothing against Joel. I'm just saying that hammer and nail.
Right. So maybe the first step is to tell you a little bit more about who you're listening to.
Yes, do tell us.
For me, I study psychology, which, let me tell you, comes in handy now as a mom of 6-year-old twins. I wrote my first book when they were 2 years old.
Which won a reader's favorite award and was an Amazon bestseller. SK plug.
That was fun. My biggest challenge goes hand in hand with balancing my life with being a mom and with writing in English since it's my second language. But that's what makes me research a lot on the mechanics of writing, and it's also why I enjoy sharing what I learn to help those who face the same obstacles that I do.
You know, you speak 2 languages better than I speak 1, so, kudos to be able to do that. I also have a degree in psychology, cognitive psychology, and I began my career as a criminal behaviorist, specializing in interrogations and deceptive behavior. I spent the last decade as a consultant and a marketing executive focused on business article writings and seminars. I've written 4 books and who knows how many short stories. But I probably got my best life lessons raising 5 kids through their teenage years.
5 kids. Yeah, right now all I want to say is shoot me now.
Yeah,
but, my kids are young, so of course that's my mentality in that.
Yeah, they're 6, you're almost through it.
Uh-huh. So back to writing. So the second thing to remember, apart from who you're getting the advice from, is to remember that writing is a personal craft.
Yeah, we're inundated with helpful advice and life hacks. Everything from the best time to wake up to achieve success to whether outlining is the best way to write your book.
The advice, though, is completely useless when you generalize it to everyone. It's like getting your clothes tailored, right? Even though advice can be adapted to fit anyone's needs, it has to be specific to you, the person, your problem, your preference, and your context.
Yeah, because if the advice doesn't work for your style or the work isn't going to fix your problem, then really all you're doing following this advice is creating a bigger mess. Which brings us to the third criteria, and that is remembering the power of trial and error. We'll be talking, about psychology and the human brain during this podcast because that's, my background in psychology, so is yours. We love to bring that stuff in. Makes us feel like we're paying off our student loans. But, an important thing to realize is that the brain dynamics are such that it loves shortcuts and it's always looking for ways to reduce energy consumption. It's why people tend to prefer simple answers over complex solutions. It's also why advice in the form of shortcuts is so alluring and so tempting for us to take on.
Right. And, the explosion of how-tos on the internet, because that's all you get these days for shortcuts, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't mean that the benefits of trial and error are behind us. Reading theories about writing process is one thing, but actually having to do it yourself is when you learn what works for you and what unlocks your creativity.
Yeah, it may be a terrible analogy, but I can't help but think about wax on, wax off from the Karate Kid, right? We often, we're in such a rush. Yeah, we're in such a rush to get to an answer or solution that we forget the value of taking the long way and the benefits that we discover by trying and, sometimes failing.
It's funny you bring up the Karate Kid. I was having a discussion with my husband that I wanted to show the kids the Karate Kid this coming weekend, and he starts singing some songs and he's telling me stuff and I'm looking at him like, I have no idea what that is because I just realized I saw this when it came out in Spanish in Venezuela. And
I want to hear what Mr. Miyagi sound like in Spanish.
I have no idea what they sound like in English. So I'll be finding that out with my kids. But anyway, going back to what we're talking about.
Yeah, so the benefits of going through the trial and error process is
that the learning comes when you have to live it. It has to be through your personal experience. I encourage everyone to follow their gut instinct and learn whether it's right or not. I really think the power of intuition comes from that.
I definitely agree. The fourth approach to discerning, the good advice from the bad advice is to consider the advisor's possible biases and our own biases when we select which advice that we're going to follow.
Yeah, not everyone you get advice from is looking for the same outcome as you. So it's best to be clear on the advisor's perspective. Like, I like to write by the seat of my pants, and Raymond, he's slightly more on the platter side. We'd both give you a different perspective on how to get your book rolling.
If you prefer one method to the other, you might outwardly dismiss the value of the opposing viewpoint.
If you believe in something specific, right?
Yeah, you may suffer from confirmation bias, and that's seeking out only the information that reinforces what you already believe to be true.
Right. Like when you said I was amazing. Oh, you've never said that. You should say that I'm amazing, and I'll be like, I knew it this whole time.
Well, it's like I just kept assuming bacon was good for me until they actually came out and confirmed that. Whether or not it's true, I'm going with it.
Or the new study where they're talking about sugar, where they realized that the companies were lying and that sugar is actually okay for you and all that. And all I want to say is I knew it.
I think what they discovered was they've been lying and sugar is not good for you.
Damn it.
Yeah, sorry.
Why are you ruining my dreams again?
Because you need to stop reading the sugar companies' propaganda that they sell you.
Advice is usually from the perspective of, well, this is what I would do. So you would have to question how closely their experience mirrors yours. Either way, you can learn from someone with different experience. It's just good to understand the distinctions going in.
And fifthly, if that's a word, you need to understand the advisor's goals and intentions.
Yeah, I always question advice that ends in a sales pitch, even if what was said was valuable.
Yeah.
It's not the person's fault. I'm just always suspicious. But, if the advice is based solely on what they're selling, I might want to dissect everything they said.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's the nature of selling that the seller isn't going to tell you there are other options or even point out the drawbacks of their system or opinion. And I want to add that a good sign of that is when the advisor speaks in absolutes or hyperbole. The last X you'll ever need, the one thing that'll make the difference, the query letter technique to land every agent. Those are suspicious statements.
It is. However, if you want to succeed as a writer, you should really read Raymond's award-winning books too.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's different because it's my stuff.
That is, yeah. And even reference sources can have their problems. Wikipedia entries sometimes have motives or persuasions rather than to provide objective information also.
Yeah, that's true, which is why to understand the validity, you have to check the references that they cite when they're saying, hey, this is something that's true. Often you'll discover that they're referencing an article as their authority, and that article actually references their article as an authority. It's called a circular reference, and it means they're saying something is true because they said it was true.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Wikipedia's gotten better at it, but they do question and they do call out bad citations, but you still have to check. Yeah, you have to know.
Yeah.
And consequently, the final thing to remember is lofty sounding credentials doesn't mean the advice isn't without problems. And my favorite example of that is the Hemingway app. Now, one would think that something named after a famous author, renowned for his succinct writing, would be the authority on determining good writing.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect when you run actual Hemingway's writing through the app that the outcome is that Hemingway is just an okay writer. But it is.
Yeah. And the same is true for many writing sites with grand and authoritative sounding names whose primary goal are to drive revenue. And because I just read an article on defamation in podcasting, I'm not going to mention any specifically. So our goal in providing advice is to the best we can in first validating that it's good advice through studies and research.
Second, to show you the other option and things that may work better for you and your style.
And third, to provide as many of the pros and cons for each choice so that you can make an informed decision.
So that's who we are. And we hope you'll join us each week as we explore that fascinating world that is a writer's journey. But for now, we leave you with this quote from Albert Einstein.
In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. But in practice, there is.
Thank you for listening to the Writers Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more articles, news and advice, visit our website, writersafterdark.net, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Writers Podcast is a Writers After Dark radio production Executive producers SK Anthony and Raymond Esposito. Copyright 2017.